What's up, Aridity Man? Back, welcome to a brand new video, and today we're going to be doing another Godzilla Minus One news roundup. In this video, we will be continuing our chronological journey through the release and development of Godzilla Minus One and its subsequent sequel, or whatever Toho's next Godzilla movie winds up being, but it will be a sequel, probably, by talking about the rest of events that happened in October of 2024. And guys, we are back in sequel territory here. We are back in it. It's time to discuss a pretty big clue about what Yamazaki's Godzilla sequel might entail. A clue big enough to make you say, Tori mo, sakana mo, doko e itta no, tombo mo cho mo, doko e itta no. I kinda nailed that. That's right, in this video we will be doing another Godzilla Minus One news roundup in which we will talk about all sorts of juicy things like some cool releases in October, as well as the New York Comic-Con panel with director Takahi Yamazaki, where he gives us a really big teaser as to what Godzilla Minus 2, or whatever they call it, is gonna look like, and it's the one you guys have been wanting to hear about. I know people have been asking my opinion on it ever since it happened, so let's do it. Starting out with some very appropriate artwork here, this first piece comes to us from Makio0001 on Twitter, and this is his Hedorah vs. Godzilla art, with Hedorah standing off against Godzilla in the final battle in that little field with the big panels that electrocute Hedorah. Great artwork. I always love Makio's style, and I really love the galaxy style which he's drawn Hedorah in. It's super cool. I love that one a lot. This next one is just fantastic. I think this is some figure art or a really nice Photoshop. This is Ito Nobuhiko's Hedorah Give It Back artwork. I love the Give It Back in there because of course it's referencing the song Give Back the Sun from Godzilla vs. Hedorah. This is sick, man. I love it. I love the colors. It's so cool. It's very menacing. I'm a big fan. This one went very viral. This one comes to us from Tamacharo, and this is their Hedorah Minus One art of Hedorah chasing the ship from Minus One. Hedorah chasing the Shinsei Maru. I love this. This is so fun. I think that this turned out great. This is a really nice Photoshop right here. It turned out really well, and I would love to see something like that in a sequel for Minus One if that's what we get. If Hedorah winds up being the villain, something like this to give Hedorah scale and terror on a human level the same way that Godzilla has would be incredible. I'm really down for that. That's very exciting. And the final piece is from my friend Nishikawa Shinji-san. So Nishikawa Shinji is a Godzilla artist. He's also a concept artist who's worked on Godzilla movies since 1989. And to celebrate Halloween, he did this artwork of Godzilla, but instead of eating the mine, he's eating the pumpkin. A reference to Godzilla Minus One, of course. And this is not Nishikawa's first Halloween Godzilla crossover. He has been doing this for years. My personal favorites of his is the Mecha King Ghidorah Witch and also the Shin Godzilla Pumpkin. I think both of those are a lot of fun. Getting into the news, Toho released Godzilla Energy. I don't know the Roman numeral. Is that 4 or 6? Is that 4 or 6? I don't know. I think it's 6, I'm pretty sure. It's an energy drink inspired by Godzilla. The artwork here on the cans is super kick-ass. I think that's a lot of fun. I did try the Godzilla Energy. I believe I tried the 4 or the 5 for Godzilla Day 2023. You can see that in my review for Godzilla Minus One, my first impressions, but it was pretty good. It was like a very subtle blue raspberry, but it's a nice energy drink and it does have a good kick to it. A series of Godzilla Minus One car accessories were released. These are car goods. There is these ones which I think hang from your rear view mirror. I think they're little tags for your rear view mirror. There's whatever this is. I believe these go in your windshields. I think these protect you from the sun. I think these protect your car from the sun, but I don't actually totally know what these are supposed to be. Very cool though. There's this one which is a Godzilla key tag, which I like a lot. And then Toho released their stylish 2025 Godzilla Minus One monochromatic calendar. Stylish was their word, not mine, although I would use that word to describe this. This is a sick as hell calendar with these really up close, really high quality renders of Godzilla's details, like his face, his spines, his tail, his hand, which is really cool. I've never seen that render before, and his foot, which is also really awesome, as well as just him roaring. It does kind of crunch a couple of the months into each other though, but it does look really nice. This is very pretty. pretty. I love the aesthetic of it. I love how clean it looks. The Godzilla wooden art that we talked about a couple news and updates back appeared at the Godzilla store Osaka on sale. They were selling Godzilla Minus One, Godzilla Final Wars, and Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah wooden art. Very cool. This, I would also use the word stylish to describe. I think it's very sweet. A series of Godzilla unique goods were released. These are all handcrafted. A Godzilla clock. I believe this is a Godzilla pocket knife, and then a Godzilla dog tag were released. Very cool. Toho released some Godzilla sliding door panels. These are, of course, for Japanese doors, but oh my god, do you think they'd fit on an American door? I would love one in my background. There's, of course, Godzilla Minus One, as well as classic Godzilla. And honestly, as much as I'm into the Minus One, and as much as I really like that very stylish, again, Godzilla artwork with the face and the spines, that GMK one, it's just undeniably cool. Now, I understand that this is meant for a double door and would not work on an American door, but man, that would be the one I would want. If I could get any of these, that's the one. Kind of like whenever we talk about the flats Godzilla Minus One puzzles, a Godzilla Minus One wooden puzzle was released. This is a bamboo puzzle featuring 398 pieces, so a lot more advanced than the flats one. It's a lot more detailed, looks a lot more like Godzilla. This is clearly for an older demographic than that one, and for people who are more advanced with puzzles, but it actually looks really great in the end. A Godzilla menu appeared at the Tokyo Midtown Hibiya. The Tokyo Midtown Hibiya is right in the center of Godzilla Square, a location you can see me visit in the first episode of Godzilla Ground Zero, a series in which I traveled to Tokyo to show off a bunch of the Godzilla filming locations in real life. So this is their Godzilla menu, a crossover menu to celebrate Godzilla Day. There's a bunch of Godzilla related items on it. Here's a picture of it once it was released at the Tokyo Midtown Hibiya. I really like that one, but some of these other ones look like, it looks like poop. It does look like poop. I don't even know what that's supposed to be, but it looks like poo-poo. And then of course they retook over the mall. It looks actually very similar to when I was there, with Godzilla right in the front window. Very awesome, as he should be. Getting into New York, Comic-Con director Takahi Yamazaki, was announced, would be hosting an autograph session. Very cool, and I'm very hyped for anybody who got those autographs. That's awesome. A video was then released from New York Comic-Con showing Yamazaki celebrating at the end of the panel with all of the audience members going crazy. One of you guys, as a viewer of my channel, one of you guys said you guys won one of the Godzilla, the golden ones, given away at this panel. That is so freaking cool. Whoever that is, I can't remember, but whoever that was, tell me, which question did you get right? I was like sitting here watching that panel the other night, getting all like bouncy in my seat, like I know the answer to all of these before he even finished them. Even the last question where it's 50.1 meters, I knew that one before he even finished the question. So I'm very excited for whoever won. That was very cool. And if you're like, what the hell are you talking about? Well, let's get into it. Director Takahi Yamazaki held a Godzilla panel at New York Comic-Con. It had a huge turnout, very big turnout, and I want to go into that, so let's break it down. I've got a link down below as well if you want to go watch it for yourself, but go check it out. First of all, shout out to Luminos for uploading the extended panel. I really appreciated that. That was a huge help. I loved watching it, and you did a great job filming it. So big shout out to Luminos for filming and releasing the extended panel, as Toho only released a condensed version of it. Also, shout out to Mike for being an amazing host and MC during this panel. I know from personal experience how nerve-wracking and hard it is to host a panel like this at an event like this with Godzilla guests up on stage. He did a wonderful job, and it was really cool having a host who was able to both ask the questions and translate them. That was really neat. The panel starts out with Yamazaki celebrating the audience's warmth and passion. He then jokes about how he really didn't think he'd win an Oscar for Godzilla Minus One, and just in case, he kind of wrote the acceptance speech the day before thinking he wouldn't really have to give it. He then shares a story about how he couldn't read his own handwriting during the acceptance speech, and his VFX director Kyoko Shibuya was kind of teasing him about how they were running out of time during his speech. This is all stuff we've talked about in previous Godzilla news and updates, as this is stuff he's talked about already in Japan back home. Yamazaki then explains that he doesn't really view himself as a multitasker when working on these movies. He views himself as simply a filmmaker. The jobs of director, writer, and VFX supervisor, in his opinion, they're all one job, at least the way he works with his workflow. It's all one job, which I think is really cool. I would love to learn VFX so that I could do that too. That seems like a really, really smart way to make films, knowing exactly how they'll start and end. That's really cool. He then talks about how as a director, he'll beef with himself as a writer, and he'll beef with his own script, and sometimes as a VFX supervisor, he'll beef with himself as a director, as some of the shots are just impossible to add VFX to. I think that's a lot of fun hearing that. He did tell that story in the Godzilla Minus One re-release as well. That was part of the extended release that came out in theaters in October and November. Yamazaki reminds everyone that Godzilla in Godzilla Minus One was based on his cat, and he talks about how he loves when people ask about Godzilla being cat-like, and he loves to talk about his cat, and he wishes more people would ask follow-up questions about his cat, which is so cute. He then talks about towards the end of Minus One when Godzilla's clawing at the Shin Den with Shikishima inside, that was heavily inspired by his cat. Yamazaki then gets excited and shares that Adam Wingard explained that Godzilla in Godzilla Kong the New Empire was also based on his cat, specifically the way Godzilla naps inside the Roman Colosseum, and that was something we talked about with the directors on directors interviews between the two. Yamazaki then jokes that all good Godzilla directors must first be good cat owners. Yamazaki revealed that he had a lot of influence over the re-release poster for Godzilla Minus One and celebrates that it was back in theaters at this time, or about to be. He says that a big inspiration for this poster was actually the US poster, with Godzilla attacking the Takao at sea, but he had some critiques of how large Godzilla was in that poster compared to the Takao and wanted to improve upon it. He explains that ironically his biggest complaint of the US poster being Godzilla was too large didn't really matter because when he sketched out draft after draft of the re-release poster, he kept making Godzilla bigger and bigger and bigger to make him more imposing on the poster, and in the end Godzilla wound up twice the size he was in the movie in order to look cool on the poster, just like in the original IMAX poster where he was way too large. They hype up the BTS reel in the re-release, and Yamazaki explains that it isn't to be overhyped, it's not extended version of the movie or anything, but it's just a fun BTS reel and an interview. They then host an extremely fun to watch Godzilla giveaway where they give away golden Godzilla figures, which we talked about in the last Godzilla Minus One news and updates. One of the questions Yamazaki asks is about how tall Godzilla is in the movie, and he has a lot of fun with being very specific about it. How tall is Godzilla Minus One? But he will only accept answers to the 10th decimal point, and the answer is 50.1 meters, a fact which we have talked about on the channel for like over a year now. It's been a long time since we found that out and we've been talking about that, but it was interesting to hear that Godzilla was supposed to be only 50 meters in Minus One, except that one very particular member of the CGI team measured Godzilla exactly, including an extremely small bump on Godzilla's head sticking up 0.1 meters, and sent that number to Toho when asked how tall Godzilla was, making Godzilla 50.1 meters, whereas Godzilla was supposed to be 50 meters, which was the same size he was back in 1954. And it gets a lot of fun to hear where that 0.1 comes from. We were always confused about that. I always thought it might be the way Godzilla's spine sticks up over his head at certain postures, and potentially that is what it is, as Yamazaki makes the joke as well, that Godzilla can only achieve that height at a very specific posture. A Godzilla birthday montage plays with lots of fun celebrities and fan favorites both from inside and outside the world of Godzilla. Two quick honorable mentions goes to Jordan Vogt Roberts of Kong Skull Island fame. I don't know what he was doing there, but that was exciting. I don't know why none of the MonsterVerse directors other than him showed up in that, but that was a cool surprise, as was O'Shea Jackson Jr., who of course is trying to launch his own Godzilla anime, Monarch G-Team, which is a spin-off of the MonsterVerse, so I thought I'd shout those two out. But there was tons, including many of my faves from the world of Godzilla, with my personal favorite appearance being from Yumiko Saku. Getting into an audience Q&A, Yamazaki jokes about how people were more excited to take photos of their shoes at the Oscars than the actual VFX team, and those Godzilla Minus shoes became incredibly iconic following that. He talks about how that includes the designer for Ridley Scott films and how he hopes to see Godzilla Minus shoes appear in a Ridley Scott film in the future. Well, in pre-production on Godzilla Minus One, Yamazaki was apparently approached to make Godzilla the Ride, which gives us an indication that holy crap, Minus One has been in production forever. As we've talked about in previous Godzilla Minus One news and updates, Yamazaki at one point revealed that Godzilla Minus One was in development before Shin Godzilla, and that the film was around and being slowly worked on before Shin Godzilla, and Yamazaki was the one who kept pushing it off because he wanted the VFX industry in Japan to catch up to his vision. Here we have a double down, confirming that Godzilla Minus One was already moving forward with pre-production in early 2019 at the absolute latest, but we already know it was before 2016, and during that process they were approached for Godzilla the Ride. He viewed this as a fantastic opportunity to practice for Godzilla Minus One and to get some experience with Godzilla under his belt before making the movie. Because Yamazaki's VFX studio wasn't finished at the time they made Godzilla the Ride, the first time he finally got to see his work pay off was seeing it in the actual amusement park viewing screen, where it was really overwhelming because it surrounded 3 walls, and so he had to watch it multiple times to make sure it all came out the way he wanted. When asked if there will be any future for Godzilla films using suitmation, Yamazaki hesitates, explaining that it's a type of visual expression that is very charming, but because it's so limited, he doesn't think it will happen unless there's a very passionate director in the future of Godzilla who really wants to use suitmation over CGI visual effects. Doesn't seem like that's the route he will be heading with the next Godzilla film, and I don't think that's the biggest issue. Although I would like some mocap. Yamazaki explains that his emotional connection to Godzilla began as a small child when he first saw Godzilla. He was so terrified, but that intense reaction made him fall in love with Godzilla. And then we get into some really interesting answers here. This first question was about the ending of Godzilla Minus One, when asked if there was ever a draft where Noriko doesn't survive the events of the film. Yamazaki explains that at the original ending of Godzilla Minus One, in the first drafts of the script, Noriko does die. She never survives Ginza, and she's never reunited with Shikishima in the hospital. However, Yamazaki didn't think Shikishima deserved such a horrible punishment. He has spent so much time in the film trying to persevere that at the end, Yamazaki didn't feel comfortable spending a lot of time with that character in his grief only to land on such a depressing ending. In doing so, Yamazaki was really torn up over how to end the movie and eventually came up with the idea he did. We'll explain in a future Godzilla Minus One news and update where that idea came from, but it's so wholesome and it is a real world story that Yamazaki has a personal relationship with. Yamazaki then goes on to explain that when it came time to film the scene of Noriko in the hospital, he wasn't convinced that she should have survived the Ginza event on her own, so he decided last second to include some VFX dots on her neck and to film a close-up of her neck just in case he wanted to put in a secret idea he had in the back of his head in the film. The ending wasn't planned. Noriko was never supposed to survive, but in deciding that she was gonna live, he needed a justification to do so, and so he decided to film a secret ending all on his own. When it came time to see the VFX of Godzilla's atomic breath blowing up Ginza, Yamazaki revealed that there is absolutely no way Noriko survived on his own, and so he decided to add his very secret alternate ending into Godzilla Minus One, the curse of Godzilla in Noriko, the mark on her neck. He didn't explain what that means or where that might lead in a sequel, but for now that's what he leaves us with, is that it wasn't originally the plan, but it was something he felt he needed to do out of necessity. I always love hearing stories like that. That's awesome. And finally, the one you really want me to get into, this actually came earlier in the panel, but someone asks Yamazaki, if you could remake any Godzilla movie, which would you pick and why? And Yamazaki gives an incredibly fast and deliberate answer. It's a definitive Hedorah, and the audience goes wild. Yamazaki then elaborates, explaining, Hedorah was really far ahead of his time, and it's just that technology wasn't with the character at the time. But technology has finally caught up to the idea of Hedorah, and so now is the best time to bring that character back, as he could be brought back in a new, creative way that would justify the original premise of that character and hopefully live up to that idea in ways that Suitmation never could. That is so freaking cool, man. I had my brother, who's a total Godzilla normie, obviously is my brother, so he knows a lot about Godzilla through me, but he's a very normie viewer. He hasn't seen most of the movies, but I had him take a look at my figure shelves back here, and I asked him, which monsters would you pick out to appear in a Godzilla Minus One sequel? And his picks were Anguirus, and to my surprise, Hedorah. And he just explained, Hedorah really fits the aesthetic, the brown color palette, the kind of grittiness of the character. He has seen Godzilla vs. Hedorah with me in theaters, so he's obviously very aware of that movie. We also grew up watching it on DVD from Blockbuster back in the day, so he's very aware of Hedorah. And to my surprise, with Hedorah being such an outlandish character in Alien that feeds on pollution and becomes a big blobous monster, that was still one that he felt that fits the Minus One universe and aesthetic and tone. I gotta agree, if it's done right, Hedorah really could work in the Minus One aesthetic, even though I do feel like it's kind of a huge leap to go from Godzilla to an alien, but it depends on what their origins for Hedorah are. It depends on how far he deviates from that and what he's trying to say with the character. Hedorah, I think, is a very message-driven character, and I think that's what's so intriguing about him, and that's why I think he works so well in Minus One, because there's a lot to say with him, and I think there's a lot to do, and I totally agree. Hedorah is a character that was very limited with the Suitmation technology, and I don't think he lived up to the idea of Hedorah as much as he could, and I think that now is the time. If you bring him back with CGI technology, you can do things you could have never dreamed of doing back in 1971, and it could be really exciting. The thing that makes me think that that is a big giveaway on where things are headed, first of all, is because Yamazaki was announced just days later to be returning to direct a new Godzilla movie. Secondly, we found out that he recorded his announcement at the same time as New York Comic Con, right when he gave this answer. And third, Yamazaki's big thing was that Godzilla Minus One needed to wait until technology caught up to his vision. So he pushed the movie back from pre-2016 until 2023. And now we're finding out Yamazaki has had an idea for Hedorah that VFX couldn't live up to until now, and he feels now's the time, and now he's coming to do another Godzilla movie. I think that that is a really big giveaway, that the sequel very much could head in the direction of Godzilla versus the Smog Monster. Although, I'm really curious to see how he adapts that character to fit the Minus One world, and especially given the characters we have, and especially given how things end for Noriko with the mark on her neck, I can't see a way she ties into Hedorah, so I'm incredibly excited and curious to see what he's cooking up in his little brain, and I cannot wait. There's no one else I trust more to deliver a Godzilla Minus One sequel than director Takashi Yamazaki, and to be honest, given how much I struggled to find the same value in than the original Godzilla vs. Hedorah that so many other fans find. I do think that the movie has a lot going for it, but I don't love it the way that most of you guys do, unfortunately. There's no one I'm more excited about to see bring that character into the modern day than director Takahi Yamazaki, a director who I feel like I've never been more on the same wavelength of what I want in a Godzilla movie than I have with him before. Whereas if like Adam Wingard was going to bring Hedorah to life, I think it would be really exciting, but I think it would be a lot more like the original movie, which is not a movie that I love the way you guys do. So I'm really excited to see where things go from here with potentially, I'm making that very clear, potentially Hedorah to appear in a -1 sequel. Now, of course, this could be a big rug pull and you could just be like, that's something I want to do, but it doesn't fit the -1 universe, so I'm not going with it. That could happen, and I wouldn't be too upset about that, depending on the direction they head with a Godzilla sequel, if that's even what they're making. But I'm excited either way. If Yamazaki's making a standalone Godzilla vs. Hedorah remake, bring it on. I would be very disappointed to see -1's story not continue, but at the end of the day, oh well. And if he's gonna do a Godzilla -1 sequel and Hedorah's not in it, again, it's like, okay, that's fine by me. This is a win-win. Hearing that he's interested in Hedorah, that's exciting me, but also, it's not one of my favorite monsters, so I don't need him back. I would love Anguirus more than Hedorah, so I feel like I'm in a great position to be like, bring on the next one. I'm excited to see whatever they've got. Hedorah or not, who knows? What do you guys think about all this? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please comment below and let me know. What monster do you want to see in a Godzilla -1 sequel, and how do you feel about the potential for Hedorah to return? I'd love to hear what you've got to say. As always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. It is through the support of the patrons on Patreon that I'm able to continue to make videos like this for you in the first place. If you want to support the Patreon, you can use the link in the description below where you can get early access to content, access to the Discord community, and more. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you all next time for the next one. D-Man out.